government violates the non-aggression principle, or the NAP, which is the idea that the initiation of force is wrong in all cases, and that self-defense against the initiation of force is moral, right? So we've already talked about how government violates that, but I want to talk about the concept of self-ownership and how government violates the concept of self-ownership. The concept of self-ownership, as the name would imply, is pretty simple. It's that you own yourself. You own your body, you own your mind, you own your thoughts. By extension, you also own the fruits of your labor. Logically, so if you work and obtain money and purchase items, you own the fruits to that labor. So let's get into why government violates the philosophy of self-ownership. The first obvious thing that comes to mind is taxes. Taxes violate the principle of self-ownership, that you own the fruits of your labor. Okay. The government has the capacity to take from you whatever amount of money they want in the form of taxes. That is taking the fruits of your labor and spending it for their own purposes. That's why we as libertarians and ANCAP say that taxation is theft, because it is. It's the government taking your money without your consent at gunpoint, depriving you of your self-ownership because they're depriving you of your ownership of the fruits of your own labor. So that's why taxation violates the philosophy of self-ownership. Another thing that violates the philosophy of self-ownership is prison. Now, obviously, I don't think that we need to just have crime rampant everywhere and there's private solutions, but 80%, 4 out of 5 of the people in prison are in prison for victimless crimes, most commonly drug-related offenses, the use of illegal drugs, right? And these people are taken and thrown and locked in a cage for their own personal decisions to smoke a plant. That is a violation of self-ownership. The government can tell you what you can put into your body, and they can throw you in a cage forcibly if you don't comply. That is violating the self-ownership that you have of your body. So the government actively is violating people's self-ownership in order to achieve its own goals. They're denying people the fruits of their labor, and they deny people of their right to their bodily self. They also do this through search and seizure, through unwarranted search and seizure. At public schools, there is a lesser standard of evidence. The channel of the philosopher, who you guys should check out, she made a video about that, where it was talking about how there's a lower standard of evidence now in the school, where instead of probable cause, there has to be reasonable suspicion, whatever that means, for a school resource officer to be able to search a child and put their hands on a child and rummage through their belongings. That is violating self-ownership. So government violates the non-aggression principle. It initiates force against others. And the government violates self-ownership, the idea that you own yourself. The fact that there are taxes means that they take the fruits of your labor at gunpoint, and the fact that there are prisons and searches and seizures and all this even violates your bodily self-ownership. So just remember, when the government is trying to legitimize their surveillance or other coercive actions or higher taxes, remember what the logical implications of that really are. And thank you for listening.